You think you understand Robert De Niro, the controlled performer, the quiet professional, the man who rarely lets personal conflict reach the surface. But at 82, the mask has slipped. For the first time, De Niro has let the public see the actors he truly could not stand, the men who irritated him, resisted him, or challenged the standards he protected for decades. Hollywood remembers him as patient. The truth is more complicated. Today we break down the 5 names De Niro quietly resented, each revealing a different fracture behind the myth. And the final one changes everything. Number 5, Mickey Rourke, the defiant shadow. To the public, Mickey Rourke was the wild talent who admired De Niro from afar. To De Niro, he was a young actor whose admiration clashed with discipline the moment they shared a set. Rourke was born in Schenectady in 1952 and rose through boxing gyms and small roles before becoming one of the most magnetic actors of the 80s. That rise came with sharp edges, and De Niro felt those edges the moment they began work on Angel Heart. The scene has been repeated often. De Niro watched Rourke's process, measured it, and made his choice in a single, direct moment. He looked at him and said, "I think it's better if we don't talk." No explanation, no softness, a quiet boundary that cut through the admiration Rourke had carried for years. Rourke later said he had placed De Niro beside Brando and Pacino and expected a mentor. Instead, he walked away from that set feeling dismissed by the man he had studied since his youth. Rourke insists the distance did not end there. When Scorsese began putting together The Irishman, he believed a meeting was coming, the cast filled with heavy names. Rourke said the message came back from the production side that De Niro did not want him involved. Losing that part hurt not only his pride, but his finances. The disappointment hardened into bitterness, and bitterness turned into open hostility. He said he no longer looked up to De Niro, and now looked through him. He added, "I lived that life, so every time I look him in the face, I look right through his a-hole." The fracture became public in 2020. Rourke went to Instagram and released years of resentment. He accused De Niro of calling him a liar and ended with a line that revealed how far he had drifted. "When I see you, I'm gonna embarrass you severely 100% as God is my witness." De Niro's side rejected the claims, stating Rourke had never been considered for The Irishman in any capacity. The dispute only deepened the divide. The admiration Rourke once carried evolved into defiance, frustration, and open threats. What began as a boundary on one set became a public feud that has lasted decades. And if silence can create distance, the next case shows how refusing a simple ritual can spark an entirely different kind of conflict. Number 4, Joaquin Phoenix, the rebel of method. To most viewers, Joaquin Phoenix is the intense craftsman who transforms completely for every role. To De Niro, he was an actor whose instinctive solitude pushed against the discipline he believed every professional owed the work. Phoenix was born in San Juan in 1974 and built his career through raw, emotional performances that came from instinct rather than rehearsal. That method entered the room the moment Joker began. The tension started with a simple request. De Niro wanted the entire cast seated together for a read-through. One room, one table, every voice heard before filming began. This was how he measured respect for the material. When Phoenix refused, the break felt deeper than a scheduling issue. Todd Phillips later said De Niro called him and spoke with a steady firmness. "Tell him he is an actor. We are going to sit down and read it." No raised voice, only expectation. Phoenix answered with a line that shut the door. "There is no way I am doing a read-through." His choice was final. Yet De Niro's way held. The read-through took place in his New York office, a space he treated as an extension of his craft. The cast sat together. Phoenix barely spoke. His voice drifted, thin and distant, as if he wanted to escape the table entirely. When it ended, he stepped outside for a cigarette. He later said the session made him feel physically sick, as if his body rejected the structure he had been pulled into. De Niro watched him with quiet steadiness. He was not looking for dominance. He was looking for order. Afterward, he approached Phoenix, touched his face gently, and said, "It is going to be okay, Bubble." The gesture was soft, but the distance remained. On set, they barely spoke. Phoenix later said that after the first good morning, there was nothing more. De Niro agreed and defended it. He said their characters did not need personal conversation. They only needed to work truthfully in front of the camera. The reason for the clash was simple. De Niro comes from a world where hearing the script aloud is essential. He believes shared preparation anchors the story. Phoenix works from emotion and instinct. He would rather feel his way through a moment than rehearse it in a room full of people. Yet despite the friction, they reached a fragile balance. The face-to-face face-to-face confrontation and De Niro's quiet reassurance showed a real attempt to connect. The result was a film that demanded psychological intensity from both of them. Their opposing methods created tension, but that tension shaped the atmosphere Joker needed to land with such force. Process can create rebellion, but conflict can also sharpen a performance. The next case shows how two actors can disagree without speaking, where movement and silence argue more than words ever could. Number 3. Leonardo DiCaprio, The Motion of Youth. To the world, Leonardo DiCaprio is the consummate leading man who elevates every film he touches. To De Niro, he was an actor whose restless energy disrupted the stillness he believed a scene needed. DiCaprio was born in Los Angeles in 1974 and rose through early television roles before becoming one of the defining stars of his generation. That rise came with a boldness that met De Niro's discipline and quiet, persistent conflict during Killers of the Flower Moon. On that set, the surface appeared calm, yet the current between them carried two different philosophies. De Niro worked through controlled motion, careful pacing, and silence that carried intention. DiCaprio approached the same moments with added lines, shifting phrasing, and constant reworking. Scorsese later said that DiCaprio could shape a moment again and again, endless, 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 while De Niro preferred to settle into the truth of the scene without circling it. One moment revealed the divide with complete clarity. DiCaprio pushed through a take with new words he felt belonged in the character's voice. When the camera cut, Scorsese and De Niro exchanged a single look. Years of shared understanding sat inside that glance. With that, Scorsese guided DiCaprio back to the line as written. De Niro said nothing. He simply watched, calm and direct. The weight of the scene, in his view, lived in restraint rather than adjustment. That distinction mattered because it defined how De Niro measures performance. Every pause, every shift of the eyes, every held breath must serve a purpose. DiCaprio worked through exploration. He tested moments with movement, layers, and speech. On Flower Moon, Scorsese balanced these methods in the same room. With DiCaprio, he debated choices. With De Niro, he stepped into quiet and let the stillness speak. This was not an ego battle. It was a collision of process. De Niro's irritation was not personal. It reflected the standards he carried and the precision he protected. The tension threaded through the set in subtle ways. A slight raise of an eyebrow, a moment of stillness after a take that wandered too far. Small signals passed between director and actor with no need for a word. DiCaprio's method added energy and risk. To De Niro, it sometimes felt like extra brushstrokes on a painting that already held its meaning. His own approach relied on patience, observation, and the belief that a scene reveals itself only when the noise falls away. These frictions became quiet points of reflection afterward, the kind of moments only masters working side by side ever see. Even with these differences, the final work showed harmony. Scorsese said they played off each other so beautifully. DiCaprio brought fire when a scene needed momentum, and De Niro grounded it with weight when control mattered most. The gossip about annoyance spread because it was easy to imagine clashing stars, but the truth was sharper and calmer. It was craft meeting craft, irritation refining the edges, and the final film carrying the result. If this kind of friction can sharpen a performance, the next relationship reveals something more complicated. It shows how influence can turn into guidance, and how guidance can begin to feel like control. Number 2. Joe Pesci, The Protean Bond. To most of the world, De Niro and Pesci seem inseparable, a perfect screen partnership built on instinct and harmony. To De Niro, the truth has always been more complicated. Pesci was born in Newark in 1943 and rose through music, television, and stand-up before entering film. De Niro saw a spark in him early on, long before the rest of Hollywood did, and that spark would grow into a bond held together by admiration and quiet tension. Their story began on Raging Bull, when De Niro pushed Scorsese to cast Pesci after seeing him in a small horror film. That moment shaped everything that followed. Scorsese once said, "Bob and Joe have their own language," and that rhythm carried them through years of work. Yet harmony did not mean equality. De Niro's influence ran deeper than most realized. On The Irishman, Pesci refused the role multiple times. De Niro did not argue in public. He pressed in private and told him, "Come on, who knows if we are ever going to have this chance again?" The plea was not sentiment. It was conviction in Pesci's ability and in the work work they shared. A moment from the early 80s revealed the quiet weight behind that conviction. Far Out magazine reported that Pesci had been lined up for Sharky's Machine with Burt Reynolds. De Niro allegedly told Pesci's representatives to decline. The implication was clear. He believed the film could pull Pesci off course. Reynolds later admitted he felt wounded by the intervention. What looked like guidance to De Niro felt like control to others. Pesci never spoke against it, but the ripple in their relationship remained. That pattern repeated itself decades later. Pesci stepped away from acting for years, choosing privacy and calm. De Niro asked him to return for The Irishman, and Pesci reluctantly agreed. On set, De Niro did not simply offer support. He guided him, challenged him, and urged him toward a quieter character than the explosive roles that defined him. Pesci delivered a restrained performance, almost meditative. De Niro later said he admired that version of him, the controlled side revealed through patience and precision. Pesci's own journey complicated the bond further. He has spoken of losing himself in characters, of moments when he was unsure if the man on the golf course was Joe Pesci or someone he had once played. That sense of drifting contrasted sharply with De Niro's grounded discipline. The difference created both trust and friction. Off-screen, their dynamic blended respect and disagreement, closeness and distance. De Niro never stopped believing he knew what Pesci was capable of, and Pesci never stopped guarding his independence. That tension shaped their collaborations as much as their admiration. It created performances, defined by weight, silence, and unspoken history. If influence can blur into protection, The Final Case shows something else entirely. It shows what happens when a young newcomer walks onto a set and discovers that the legend in the room is more human than the myth suggests. Number 1. Marc Maron, the mirror of myth. To most viewers, Robert De Niro appears as the flawless master who steps onto a set already in full command. To Marc Maron, the truth arrived the moment he watched De Niro work up close. Maron was born in Jersey City in 1963 and built his career through comedy and interviews, not film sets filled with icons. When he joined Joker, he carried the same reverence every actor brings when working with a legend. What he witnessed surprised him. The scene unfolded slowly. Maron watched De Niro stumble through lines, stop, reset, and begin again. Scenes were repeated until something clicked. Crew members moved in and out. Pages were checked. Nothing about it looked effortless. Maron later said the experience was totally demystifying. What he had imagined as perfection revealed itself as craft. He even remembered thinking, "This is a disaster," only to realize later that De Niro remained completely steady throughout every misstep. That steadiness became the lesson. De Niro did not flinch or rush. He did not try to mask the mistakes. He worked through them with the same patience he had carried for decades. Each reset was part of the process. He trusted the camera. He trusted the editor. He trusted the long arc of the craft more than the illusion of a perfect first take. What looked like disorder to Maron was simply the method that had shaped De Niro's entire career. The tension between expectation and reality was not personal. It was the collision of myth and truth. Maron expected the untouchable figure who never faltered. Instead, he found a professional who relied on discipline rather than mystique. The discomfort he felt came from seeing that gap close right in front of him. It was not resentment. It was recognition that mastery can look fragile while it is happening. The revelation stayed with him. De Niro did not arrive knowing every line. He arrived with the judgment to know when a take mattered and when it did not. His authority lived in the quiet confidence that the right moment would emerge through persistence and repetition. Maron said this was what stripped away the myth, revealing the reality beneath it. By the end, the meaning was clear. De Niro's power has never come from appearing untouchable. It has come from the silent internal standards he carries from take to take. His work is defined not by immediate polish, but by the final cut, where every choice lands exactly where he intended. For anyone watching closely, that quiet command is the truth behind the legend.